We are going to finish the day with a very important panel. In my view, the topic is sustainability, sharing values to create value. Sustainability is not only about green. Sustainability, we touched on it in several workshops and panels and conversation during the day. It's also about business models, it's about lifestyle, it's about healthcare. And so we have a panel of distinguished guests coming from different backgrounds and in various capacities in their corporation, whether they're entrepreneurs running a non-profit organization or CSR for a large media company. I'm going to introduce the moderator, Seuntjens, who is the former head of the lifestyle incubator for Phillips. And Stephen has started a new venture, Graft venture, which is a fund precisely dedicated to sustainability and lifestyle. So Stephen, without further ado, because we are running half an hour late, I give you the floor, and maybe you can introduce or let your panelists introduce themselves and go from there. We have about 45 minutes to an hour. Some of them have to catch a plane or a train, so let's keep on track. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for the very kind introduction. And the first thing I want to do is those that are in the back, you need to move forward because we're going to make this a very engaging discussion. And if you're sitting back there, we're going to miss your engagement. So please try to move forward. Everybody, I don't see everybody moving forward yet. We're a small group. Come on. Otherwise, you're going to force us to go out there. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So I think we had, there's been discussion around sustainability, and the basis for the discussion today, and with this panel, sustainability is touching every part of our lives, as everybody knows. It's in government, corporations, startups, how the consumer behaves, reacts. But the other thing is it's very personal to each and every individual. And what I'm fortunate to have is a very diverse, distinguished panel here to talk about their viewpoints surrounding sustainability and what it means. And so with that, why don't we go ahead and kick off this way, and Marcel, introduce yourself and what your organization is and a little bit about sustainability.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I'm Marcel Lubben. I'm a managing director of DSM Venturing. We're a corporate VC, and we invest in startups. Startups, for example, in sustainability, and very much so, actually. And let me explain why we do that. We were 20 years ago a chemical company. And, chemical companies are sometimes under scrutiny, and for good reasons, because they need to reduce impact on the environment. They also work with very dangerous processes sometimes, so they care about the safety of their personnel. That was really a driver for us for sustainability at that time. So it was more like a corporate duty almost. And over the last 20 years, that slowly has developed into more of a business opportunity. Because we became involved in biofuels, in solar, in wind, but on the nutrition side, we also became involved in food safety, and that's also for me sustainability. We look at sustainability in people, planet, profit. So 3 dimensions. It's not only about planet; it's also about people. So, for example. And when we talk about sustainability, we also talk about the less fortunate, people that are in need, people that need vitamins, people that need micronutrients. That's also sustainability for us. So for us, it's broad. It has really helped us as a company to get a sort of common purpose, to reinvent ourselves, and to get a very powerful mantra for our people to get themselves behind. So, coming from a corporate duty to a new business, but also a common theme for our folks. And that's why we are strongly big believers in sustainability. And for our company, I can say that it has helped us to reinvent ourselves.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Isabelle Juppe, and I am the Corporate Social Responsibility Director in a big media company named Lagadere. Lagadere is organized in 4 different subsidiaries. I'm sure you know Hachette. It's Lagadere Publishing. It's our books division. I'm sure you know Larousse, or maybe in the US you've heard about James Patterson or Stephanie Meyer, which are famous authors. The second division is called Lagadere Active. It's 4 media: radio, Europe 1, Virgin Radio, TV, mostly for kids, which are very involved in sustainability subjects, Gulli, TG, Canal J, internet website like Doctissimo, and of course magazines, very famous magazines like our worldwide flagship Elle and Paris Match. And the third division is called Lagadere Service, is about travel retail and press distribution. And the last one is called Lagadere Unlimited, and it's all with the youngest branches, which deals about sport industry and entertainment. We've just bought a few days ago Les Folies Bergères. Maybe you've heard about that. So what does sustainability mean for a media company? Maybe I can say that for the media sector, it was not as obvious as for heavier industries to tackle this subject of sustainability. We used to speak in our content on the radio, TV station, to look at everything that the companies or states were doing or not doing about their environmental impact. But we for a long time, media sector was a little bit out of the subject. But it has been maybe for 10 years that now we are very well engaged, and there are strong commitments about the 3 pillars of the sustainable development. And for example, our main environmental impacts are the paper, of course. So maybe after I can explain what we are doing for purchasing paper for forests managed sustainably, of course, and the transport issue is also a main environmental stake. But maybe the most important is for media sector and the media company is what is a responsible media, and it's maybe someone's called it the brain print, referring to the carbon footprint. We can speak about the brain print on the media and all the influence that we can have as a media on the people who read our articles, who listen to the radio, who read books, and I think it's the most interesting thing in my job is to reflect about this responsibility of media company. And on the societal pillar, we are also very much engaged. We have 2 foundations, the Jean-Luc Lagardère Foundation, which is the name of the founder of our group, which is very engaged for raising the young talents and helping people, in disabled people. And we have the Elle Foundation related to the magazine Elle, and which is very much engaged with girls and women in developing countries. And for example, today, this afternoon, in Deauville, in the Women's Forum, a big event, we have a common prize with a Women Forum called the Women for Education Prize. So these are our commitments.
Hello, my name is Michiel Boreel, and I'm Chief Technology Officer of Sogeti. Sogeti is a IT services company, one of the business units of Capgemini, 20,000 people around in 15 countries. What is interesting, I think, about sustainability is that it's the last topic on the agenda, just before we're going to a wine tasting. So I'm even surprised that it wasn't cancelled. But on the other hand, it's strange, right? Because we are all business people, most of us are, and we believe in competitive advantage. And one of the main competitive advantages is actually survival, right? You have to be there to even compete. Now, sustainability is all about survival, and still we have this idea of treating it as the last thing that we also have to cover. I'm within Sogeti not only responsible for innovation, but for some reason also for CSR and for our CSR activities, but I don't want to talk too much about that. I think that one of the mistakes that we make in thinking about sustainability and CSR, corporate social responsibility, is that we do not put it on the balance sheet, that we do not know how to attach a value to it, and that's why only the core people of the group that were here over the last 2 days actually is interested, and the rest has more important things to do. So we're doing something wrong. It's not attractive, it's not fun, and it's a cost, it's not a benefit. So we have to change that discussion into business value of sustainability. And I think that we have a huge opportunity. Because this crisis that we are in, and everybody thought that we would be out of it by now, but we are still in the middle of it. It's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity to really make change happen. By becoming a social enterprise. Now, we've heard Salesforce talk about it. We heard IBM talk about it. And the thing is that a social enterprise, first and foremost, has to be able to engage people, and to engage people, you have to be socially responsible, right? You have to be a good social citizen. Examples: BP. Everybody remembered, right? You know what BP stood for? In the marketing campaigns, they used it, and it stood for Beyond Petroleum. Now, we all know that was not the case, right? When they were up into the lips into the petroleum. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but I believe that social corporate responsibility and sustainability, we have to create what I call selfish altruism. Yes, we have to be altruistic, but for selfish reasons, for business reasons, for reasons that make sense. Now, and to make it a little bit more fun, I would say, I know an interesting joke, so I will tell you this joke. I don't know if it translates very well into English, but the joke goes like follows. So you have these two planets, and they meet somewhere in space, and the one planet says to the other planet, "Wow, you look really bad. Are you ill? What is it?" And then the other planet says, "Yeah, I have humanity." And then the first planet says, "Oh, yeah. Don't worry, I had it too. You feel a little bit bad for some time, but it will go away."
Thanks, Michiel. My name is Koelmel. I'm from Siemens, and to put it up front, I don't get paid for sustainability. I do it out of conviction. I sit in an activity that does renewable energies, and I'll tell you exactly how I got there and what my specific function is and what I like to do there and why I'm engaged. For those of you that don't know, Siemens has been very passionate about sustainability for quite some time. Has participated for 12 years in a row for the Dow Jones Sustainability Index and won it in series as best in class, beating its own record this year as opposed to last year. So I think we have a good track record of sustainability. It's a very encompassing program. I think it'd be too long if I had to go into all the details, but it covers really all the aspects from responsibility for the environment, for the people, for what we leave behind, for reducing, for increasing the efficiency of primary materials, etc., etc. And ultimately, we've categorized, and this has been discussed a number of times today as well, a couple of demographic changes, megatrends that we've identified that will drive the world and where we think that we can contribute and make a difference. One of them is obviously climate change, which is where the entire energy sector comes in. The other one is the demographic change we've heard about a little bit earlier on, about aging population and the healthcare challenges that are associated with that, where our healthcare division is obviously looking to make an impact to changing that. For those of you that don't know, and it's a little bit food for thought, in the US, the costs or the money spent on the healthcare is 16% of gross domestic product, and for food they spend 8% of gross domestic product. I think that's a little bit food for thought there. But that's a challenge that's facing all the modern societies as well. Another major driver and trend that IBM spoke about as well today is the cities, fact that more and more population are moving towards cities. And I think a colleague that was up here earlier on, there's about 200 cities. There you are, 200 cities in China alone. There will be million population cities by the year 2030. So we're really looking at 6 billion population by 2050, just bound in cities. And we've just recently, in fact, last week and a half ago, reorganized our company and grouped a new division or a new sector called Infrastructure and Cities that focuses really on those challenges, smart grids, getting electricity into the cities, getting the transport efficient, getting building performance contracting in buildings, getting all those as efficient as possible. So really to get as much as possible out of as little resources as possible, and ultimately, obviously, to be sustainable. Responsible, excellent, innovative is what we are, what we want to be. My personal responsibility is in the renewable sector for hydro and ocean power. I think that's a very exciting field because the hydropower that I work with and the customers that we see have some of the oldest renewable plants that have been running for 100 years and more, and we're looking how we can reinvigorate them, modernize them, etc., or build new ones. And on the other extreme, I'm very passionate a corporate entrepreneur, if you like, a pioneer, and we're investing in ocean power industries. That's all about extracting energy out of tidal and out of wave power. We've put in some investments, and I like to spend a lot of my energy and time with that to really make a difference. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon. I'm right at the end of the line. I am Rex Northen, Executive Director of the CleanTech Open. I run an organization which, in terms of the people and employees, is significantly smaller than anything that any of these people are involved in. We're a non-profit organization. Nevertheless, rather immodestly, we describe ourselves as the world's largest CleanTech accelerator. And the footprint is big. We worked last year in 30 countries, including La France. Pierre Nouguet is the man down here who's responsible for CleanTech up in France. Pierre, do you want to give everyone a wave? So we'll have 40 countries this year. Most of our operations are US-based. I am based in the Bay Area. We cover the whole gamut from coast to coast now with an organization that provides mentoring and training and access to capital and showcasing for very early stage clean tech companies. So our whole business is about helping on a non-profit basis the kinds of companies who are most likely to fail, unfortunately, because they're very small. Most small companies fail. Our mantra is about helping them increase their propensity to succeed. It was started by a group of those super successful Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who had the idea that these companies, if they do something like invent a new kind of table and they fail, what a sad thing that is. But if they have a new form of renewable energy that could in some way improve the planet, save the planet, not get into the planet situation we talked about a second ago, then that's something that's more than a shame if we let it go. So that's the whole issue of the CleanTech Open. The vision of what we do and the size kind of come together. The intent of this thing, being on a multinational basis and being on a large scale, is that we intend to piece together, be a connector between small companies and big. So we work with the likes of Chevron in the US and Intel and Google and University of Phoenix and Wells Fargo, and we're looking for ways of helping these small companies scale their technologies. But the connection goes beyond that point. We're looking for ways also of making sure that the mentoring we provide is the best possible quality. It could commonly be the case that the best person to help you with your particular challenge is not down the street. So we have a situation which we're building towards, and it really is happening amazingly, where somebody from Bangladesh is licensing a technology from someone in Paris who's getting their funding from an organization in London and receiving mentoring from someone in San Francisco or Boston. And the CleanTech Open provides the network for those things to happen and to help publicize those companies as well. Sustainability. Unusually for an organization that is a competition amongst all the things I've just mentioned, we have a sustainability process. We need to look at ways of making sustainability relevant to small companies. VCs don't particularly like a sustainable story, unfortunately. It's not something you would put into a VC pitch deck, but we talk about integration. And Deborah, you talked about integration, not having a chief innovation officer. Well, we don't ask for a sustainability slide when people put together their plan. We ask them to build it into what they do right from the beginning, and there is a 7-step process. Of course it's a 7-step process. There was a 7-step process, right, to introduce sustainability in your organization. But the point is that it's about economic and environmental sustainability. How do you build a company that's going to improve its bottom line by virtue of using sustainable practices? And there are many ways of doing that that are relevant to an early stage company. For instance, very obviously, when you design your thing, why not make it with reusable components? When you design your thing, why not make it with components that are easily sourceable from anywhere in the world? So we don't have to ship components from the US or from France or wherever to its ultimate destination. Why not require that your suppliers engage in sustainable practices? So there's a whole series of things you can practically do. And one final thing I want to say, whilst setting the scene in terms of sustainability, there are plenty of people who do a terrific job of doing this. Anyone here heard of David Suzuki? Who talks on this topic, and I will do a terrible job of representing him, but I will do my best. He basically talks about the challenge that we face as an organization in a kind of compelling way, and I think this is a kind of rather nifty way of beginning a conversation, although maybe we're almost finishing this conversation with the time we have. But anyway, describing the way that sustainability works and describing the challenge we face as an organization and how we need to address it. But his setting up the problem is done this way. He talks about a test tube into which you put some food. And he says, if you put some bacteria in the tube and you calculate it such that the bacteria will eat all the food within 1 hour, and the problem is an exponential one, in other words, that population growth in this particular issue is the issue, the bacteria divide and multiply at an exponential rate. So after 2 minutes, there are twice as many bacteria in the first minute, and there are 4 times as many in the second minute, and there are 8 times as many, and so forth. And so, the interesting thing is that you get to the 55th minute, and the test tube is still only 3% full. But it's the end of the bacterial race. It's the end of the test tube, 5 minutes. And the sense isn't there as any kind of challenge. At 57 minutes, the test tube is only about 12.5% full. And even at the 59th minute, it's still only half full, 50% to go. Many people in the space that we exist in believe that we are past the 59th minute. We are using up our resources too quickly, including water. We are contaminating the resources we have. We are in a position where we need to act quickly. Everyone who's bothered to come to this presentation, last presentation of the day, it's a big challenge, and we need to look for economically and environmentally sound ways of resolving it.
Very good. Thank you for each introducing yourself and a little bit about what you do within your respective organizations, how sustainability, as we can see, it's looked upon differently in each organization. Also, the value or why companies and organizations are looking at this. So with that, and with the experience you have and what you know, then a question is, what are we looking at going forward? If we know where we're at today, or what respective organizations are doing, what will be the innovations, or what will be the big aspects supporting sustainability in the next 10 years? Yeah, who would like to take a shot at that one?
I can try.
All right.
I think it's a very complex problem, and there's no simple answer to your question. If you take, for example, the whole energy issue, sustainable energy issue, I mean, you have solar alternative solutions, you have wind energy, you have biofuels, you have nuclear energy, although that has become a little bit less popular. But it is a very complex mix of alternatives that all need to be developed. And even if you look at one component like biofuels, I mean, we are a company, we are active in biofuels. We make, for example, yeast and enzymes to take waste from the paper industry or from food waste into biofuels. And yeah, but yet we only have a very small piece of the solution. You need engineering companies that build your biorefinery. You need people that design that. So you need a whole consortium of people to work on that. So I think collaboration, alliances and partnership are very key to doing this. So that's also why we believe in venturing in this domain, and we'd like to solicit new ideas from people. And collaboration, I think, is the key here, because the time that big corporations could do it all by themselves is definitely over. So for this one, I think we really need to team up.
Anybody else comment? We don't have to go in order, but however, please.
Maybe if I'm looking to what could be a sustainable future in, let's say, five years, I think that what Deborah said at the beginning of the afternoon about the smart cities is one first answer. I'm convinced that the main solutions will come in cities, and as more than 80% of population will live in cities in the next future, I think that everything concerning mobility or smart grids for energy or transport, and maybe you can make a fuel with algae for the planes, for example, or the plane for the future. I think that the main things will be in the cities. But I think that I'm convinced also of another thing is of the link between innovation and sustainability. I think they are very closely linked together. And for example, if I go back to my job, and if I want to give you just one example of how we can use innovation and technology to improve our sustainability attitude, it's, for example, for the book division, Lagadere Publishing, they have implemented a CO2 carbon forest and paper carbon calculator with the society. We met our carbon assessment, and so they invented a calculator for evaluating the emissions, green gas emissions coming from the wood harvesting, and according to the different geographical origins of the wood. And then they have implemented a model that can consolidate this data coming from this calculator with all the carbon footprints of all our productions activity for books and transport and everything. And then they will be able to propose to the editors kind of two estimates, one in euros and one in carbon. And so our editors will be able to make a choice between the right, the less carbon emitter. It's one example. And for example, we also have been experimenting for maybe 5 years print-on-demand technology that can allow us to print only books when the customers are placing the order, and so not to stock books, nor to avoid the stocking, the shipping. And so there are a lot of examples when you can use technology to improve your sustainable productions or attitude.
I would like to argue a little bit of a counterpoint. I think one of the problems of the whole sustainability thinking is that we are apologizing that we are there, right? It would be much better if humanity wasn't there. But that's, of course, it's a very strange argument, because that would be changed. So I would argue that we have to change the debate, not apologizing that we are there and trying to do less. but we have to create better technology that actually celebrates humanity, right? Example, flying is bad for the environment, so we should stop flying. No, we should engineer engines that actually produce, are better for the environment instead of bad. I'm an engineer, so I strongly believe that for all problems that technology creates, there is a technological solution. Now, often, of course, it goes by the WBB standard, which is worse before better. So we have to take a bet a little bit. Now, one of those bets, I think, in the sustainability, which is very controversial, is geoengineering. Right? This whole problem of how do you call it? Warming, global warming. From an engineering point of view, it's very easy to solve it, right? You have to put some, what is it, sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, and then you filter the sunlight, and then probably you will drop the Earth's temperature by 1 or 2 degrees. And actually you can, and if you do it a little bit more, it goes down a little bit more, and if you do it less, you do it less. All the environmentalists are very, very afraid of that, because they say, how can you do that? You're going to pollute more to solve pollution. But we need that kind of thinking. We need a different approach, because if we stay and keep guilty and depress all these people into trying to drive less or fly less or whatever, it's not going to happen. We're only depressing people.
Yeah, I like your suggestion. I've just come up with what could be a good solution to the problem. We just invent airplanes that take CO2 out the air while they fly. That would even encourage everybody to fly. I'm not quite sure if technically how we'll solve that, but why not? There's a challenge out there for some of the really creative, almost said crazy, but the really creative inventors. That's something to strive for, really. And you know, we all think it's crazy. Maybe it ain't all that crazy after all. We just have to find the right chemical formula and the conversion process that could do that. And maybe in 50 years' time, people will think, well, you know, why didn't we think of that earlier? But Steve, to get back to your question, I mean, technology, yes, technology can make a lot of difference. Some of the things that we're looking at, I mean, we all know renewable energies are there. They just have one bit of a downside. They still cost quite a bit of money. And they can't sort of grow fast enough to replace whatever else we're producing there by burning fossil fuels, be it diesel, gas, coal, whatever. And we cannot just replace the infrastructure we have, and nobody wants to obviously forfeit what they have in terms of luxury and availability and mobility and everything we've become accustomed to. But the technology is there. It's just a question of making this technology affordable. And then because you asked what technology needs to be developed, or I think energy storage is going to be a really, really important issue, whether it's chemical, whether it's batteries, whatever it is. But to store energy that's being produced by the wind parks that are being put into place, the solar farms or the concentrated solar power we heard about that Siemens does and other people do as well, to transport that into the cities where the energy is being consumed. And ideally, we'll obviously reduce the consumption of the cities, but we have to still transport that energy into the cities and into these hubs. Those are the challenges of the future, and it's just a question of money and making it happen. But I think a lot of technologies are there, and the technological challenges can actually be solved. We just need to make sure that the money's there, the resources there, and it's going to take us time.
Can I react to that? Because I think technology is indeed key, and I'm also a believer that technology is not so much a problem. It's more a sense of urgency. I mean, once the sense of urgency is there, the technology will come, I believe. I'm a strong believer in that. But I would like to add one thing, and that is also ownership by individuals. I'm in a jury of an innovation award for a company, and I see a lot of small companies developing solutions where, for example, a neighborhood gets together and jointly invest in a solar solution, for example. And I think an enormous power can go out of that. I mean, if you talk about general technology, I think absolutely we need that. But I think that personal accountability and that personal ownership is also going to make a difference for solving this. So that's more like a behavioral thing.
So Steve, you wanted this shaken up a bit, right?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
True. So I want to disagree with both of you, actually. Not disagree. Very lightly disagree with you in one particular aspect or two. I agree with you very much that technology has generated the problems and technology can solve the problems. I'm not sure if I agree so much that communities getting together and trying to solve the problem is the answer. We do this on a grassroots level at the CleanTech Open. We're looking for ways to make it happen. The problem is it's too slow and we're in the 59.5th minute. So there are plenty of things that can be done if the ownership is in the right place. One good example of this is that, there are these power supplies. You can buy a power supply for a television set which will cut the phantom power. In other words, the power that gets drawn by a TV set while the TV set's not switched on. You could insist at a policy level, you could have legislation in the US, for instance, which says no phantom power. If the TV's off, no power draw. The chip that would do that is going to cost an extra 12 cents. Until it's mandated, then it ain't happening. So there's a huge amount you can do at the right kind of level. But I also want to talk.
May I interrupt?
Yes. No.
Okay.
No.
You wanted it lively, so
all right, go on.
So here it comes. So in the Netherlands, we have a government that now has made it illegal to have a 60-watt bulb in your thing. You cannot buy them anymore.
A 60-watt tungsten bulb.
But listen. The problem is, so the next thing they will make illegal is to eat steak, because you know how much the footprint is of eating meat. You should eat much more sustainable things instead of meat.
So the question is, where's the line?
So I believe that the government is not there to take the responsibility of each and every individual. I think that what would work much better is that, and it's happening, is that individuals actually hold companies accountable for the thing that they do. So if they pollute, guess what? We will create a counter movement. We will create a site, let's pick on him, dsmpollutes.com, and we will create a riot. So it's about accountability. It's not about restricting personal freedom and personal choices.
All right. Well, I don't know how much the argument to go on, but the interesting point is, from my perspective, all about urgency. Comes back to it. This ain't going to happen because people in Texas are going to decide that it's an important thing. It simply isn't going to happen in the time that we have. But there are other things which I think are actually, I'm very optimistic about. And one of the things about the exponential curve I described a minute ago, which is the situation, the bacteria and the test tube, which is working against us at a level in terms of the way that we're polluting the planet, is that we have all seen the price of photovoltaic cells come down dramatically over the past few years. Ray Kurzweil is a futurist, an interesting guy, who accurately predicted the fall of the Soviet Union and the proliferation of the internet and all sorts of fabulous things. And he observes, actually he doesn't really observe what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say is that it takes 35 to 40 years for a new energy technology to come into being. So it took, from the moment that Edison first installed an electricity grid in Lower Manhattan, it took about 40 to 50 years for wide-scale deployment of electric grids in the US. There are plenty of other examples. World War II to end of the 20th century for oil in certain implementations and so forth. What Kurzweil says is that if you look at the curve behind photovoltaic, we are 16 years away now, 16 years away from the entire world's power being delivered from the sun. We have to solve the energy storage problem. This is true. So there are some big battery issues which have to come with that. But nevertheless, I'm optimistic that, looking at the way history works, by the way, we'll be about 40 years from the invention of the solar cell to 16 years from now for the whole thing to happen. So there's plenty of opportunity for us to see technology solving the problems that we have. My favorite, personally, I will just finish by saying on this topic, is technologies that take plastic out of the waste stream. So we've seen some super technologies that, by way of example, turn plastic into roof tiles or plastic into building materials. You know, if you can give some value to plastic other than throwing it in the ocean, then we'll see that problem cleared up, I think, pretty quickly.
Sure.
If I may add just
Sure.
clarification, we are very fortunate. Thank you. If I may add, it's a simple clarification about grid parity. So just this last week in the United States, because of the economics of production and manufacturing of photovoltaic cells, they became equal to the cost of coal in terms of production energy. And this just happened this last week, and you see a lot of solar energy companies who are producing and manufacturing these cells going out of business. And you think this is a bad thing. It's not. It's a good thing, because the industry is consolidating. Photovoltaics have become a commodity now. And for the first time, the cost of producing energy using photovoltaic solar cells equals the cost of producing energy burning up coal. If anybody asks, you know, why technology is useful, this is what I point them. And this is good news. It's fresh. It happened just today. So, you know, you got to be happy. So cheers to that.
Yes, and the other piece of good news, thank you for raising that point. So in certain parts of the world, we've been at grid parity with solar for some time. But the other piece of news is that if you put PV on your rooftop, actually it can be not cost competitive with the cost of production, because it costs the power company quite a lot to transmit the electricity to you, and they make a margin on top of it and pay certain taxes and so forth, which they charge to you. So actually you can pay significantly more per kilowatt hour with electricity that comes downstairs than it costs the utility to produce it in the first place.
And again, with smart grid, you know, this is an issue that has been addressed. So in the next 5 years, you know, this is not going to be an issue. So, and I think thanks Siemens for that as well.
So I think what has been determined from the one question I asked is that there's plenty of space for innovation in the next 10 years here. There needs to be a sense of urgency, and it will require a responsibility of all parties, government, individuals, and businesses. And what I also sense from the discussion is that there's hope and a bright future that it can happen. So having said that, I'm looking at time here, and there's a few minutes left. And part of this was to also get you engaged, and that's why I asked you to come closer down. We've had one question or comment, and I see some hands going up. We'll start in the back. Yes, right? Yes.
Okay. On a positive note, I just read a book called Firms of Endearment. And I read a book called Firms of Endearment, and it's all about CSR and real ROI. And it was a really inspiring book because it documents all these companies who made a priority for CSR and how their performance has been better than the companies that didn't have a focus on CSR. So if someone's looking for numbers and stuff, it's a really good book.
Thank you. Thanks. That's maybe you can send that out for everybody, for those that didn't write it down.
We'll send it out to all the attendees.
Yeah, perfect. Yes? Here. I'll just walk out.
Hello. So it's all about innovation and society, which is very great. CSR, there is social inside, and so far I'm hearing about environment mostly, about men and daily life of people. I don't hear much. So I would like to know, corporations are part of a big ecosystem made of other corporations, governments, men, and right now we see that the situation is pretty bad for corporations because it's a crisis, and many companies suffer because they have less customers than before, because companies are less rich and people are less rich too. So do you think that CSR should encompass or tackle the issue of employment, or at least think about it a little? Do you think it's part of CSR, or do you think it's something which is completely irrelevant? That's my question.
Is it for somebody specific or it's for the panel as a whole?
I would say the people who want to answer.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know the answer personally, just raising the
Who
point.
wants to take it? Go ahead, whoever.
I think one of the most important corporate social responsibilities for a company is to create jobs. Absolutely. So you have to do it. And how do you do it? By creating meaningful innovations, right? That people like and that they like to buy, and that's how you create more jobs. So absolutely, you're right. That's the primary responsibility. Secondary is that you do it in an honest way, that you do it by being good, right? This whole old, I don't know who said it once, it's an American, I think, Benjamin Franklin, I think, that said, by doing good, we do extremely well. So you have to be good, you have to do good things, but for selfish reasons. So I believe within my company, CSR, we do a lot in CSR, but we do it because people feel happier in our organization because we do it, and they stay. And when they stay, I make more money. So we have to create these selfish altruism.
I think it really, and I didn't go into details earlier on, but expands really from educating and helping educate people of perhaps lesser education and getting them into the employment market. It includes generating jobs, as you said, exactly, and of course you need innovative products and successful solutions to create more jobs. It's a self-perpetuating philosophy. And then ultimately, what is also part for us of corporate social responsibility is taking care of your employees in terms of their health, of their stress level. Not so much because you don't want them to get ill, but because you want them to be healthy. And you know, so that all is part of the overarching corporate social responsibility program, at least for us within Siemens. And I know other big corporates are also doing things for their employees, not just to make sure that they have cover for illness, but also have programs really to support wellness, really well-being, which obviously then stimulates again motivation and obviously again it's you know, it's good for everybody, as you said.
So just one quick thing, because I want to be, you know, difficult. It's just the word overarching, actually. I think it's a very good word to describe this whole sustainability space, and I think it's the problem of sustainability. I think sustainability, no one knows what sustainability is. It's such a broad and vague and overarching kind of term, and I think what we need to do is find specific ways of addressing our issues. The problem with sustainability broadly is that it's a piece of jargon. Actually, you need something to describe this very broad thing about doing well and doing good and so forth, but I'm not sure if it helps us very much.
Other question? Yeah, if you can pass the mic, thanks very much.
I just want to say, I mean, a couple of comments that were made in the panel that I find very challenging is the notion that somehow the person at the vital end of the value chain is somehow responsible for the behavior of somebody very far up the value chain. You know, particularly, can I create a website to protest something? I mean, there's a lot of people protesting on Wall Street right now, and I don't see a lot of change in the banking system. Certainly Murdoch's views on the media is not changing. But one of the things I wanted to specifically is curious about from the woman from Elle magazine, it's also interesting because, you know, the online subscription for an iPad version of Elle is $19, but the subscription for the print magazine is $10. So if a company chooses to extract, you know, twice the value from the value chain and then says, I want to minimize the impact into the value chain, I wonder, wouldn't it be better if, since the cost of production is lower, the selling price was lower, as opposed to saying, we're going to take an adversarial approach to our customers, we're creating extra value for them, so we'll extract it, and then we'll be upset when they want to see glossy pages. I mean, once again, I'm not really sure what power the consumer has to protect themselves against that. And I'm curious what your thinking is on that. I don't know if it's a question, but...
Does somebody want to take that one?
Sorry? What about, I don't...
Need a mic. Mic.
Yeah.
You know, it's a premium organic food. It's a premium product, and in many cases, massively and inappropriately overpriced.
It's not the same thing.
No, I understand. In this case, he's saying it's cheaper, actually, to provide it.
He's saying if you want to hit CSR,
Yeah.
Okay, if you have a CSR goal, but your incentive, the consumer, is to violate it, then it's a contradiction. Absolutely.
I think, but that's one of the problems in CSR. If you go to Wikipedia and you check the description on CSR, basically they describe two schools. One is this idealistic, make a difference in the world, solve poverty in the world, etc. All very good. The other description is that it's actually very negative. It's under the cover of CSR, terrible crimes are committed, right? I don't know what is the description, but the debate is very much going on, right? So CSR could be a nice. We let our people in China work with how do you call it? Dangerous chemicals, toxic chemicals. But by the way, we have this orphanage that we support in India, right? And then we feel very good about ourselves. So there's a lot of hypocrisy, I would say, in CSR.
Yes, I agree, and I think that we must admit that all these CSR and sustainability issues are full of contradictions. And for example, so I am the CSR manager at the corporate level of the group media, and Elle is one magazine of our Lagadere Active subsidiary. And at Elle, they are very much engaged in the emancipation of women. And for example, Valérie Toragnan, which is the directrice de la rédaction of the magazine, she is a very, very engaged woman. Last year, she organized what we call les États généraux de la femme, with hundreds and hundreds of women coming from all over the world to speak about women issues. And so I mean that on one side, the magazine and people who are working in the magazine are very much committed to defend women's rights and also sustainable issues, with a lot of coverage about sustainable green initiative or good experiments. But we are sometimes on the other side, we can have articles about, of course, consumption, looks, when you can see all the models with very expensive clothes on their bodies, and so and what you say about the iPad and the magazine. iPad is another just a new market for the company. So of course there are also business goals, and so it's you're right when you say it can be a little bit hypocrisy, because you have to try to be coherent with your values, with your content, but sometimes you have also to earn money, and so it's not so easy. But I think that we are just at the beginning, and we have to engage the whole people who are working, and it's not so easy. You have to convince people that sometimes it can be a key factor for your performance to be sustainable, and sometimes you can have a very good commitment toward the society, toward young people, or because young people and women are the two categories that we are trying to be committed to.
Question. Yeah.
I think in the current day we have replaced CSR with EGR, which is much simpler, very clear. Environment, governance, responsibility. I think we should all just move on, forget CSR. It's done for the last 25 years. Now it's EGR, a new set of acronym, and who knows what's next, but at least it reflects the three basic things. They're simple, it's easy to understand, and everybody knows the remit of what they have to produce.
Does anybody want to agree or disagree with that statement?
I think I agree. But I think that we need to do a little bit more than only change the wording. What is really important, the mindset has to change. It's about the mindset of companies, when they put it on top of their agenda. And when will they put it on top of their agenda? Usually when their clients put it on top of their agenda, right? Yeah, investors. Yeah.
We have a question. Is there a mic there? Yeah, great. Thanks.
Well, given that governments in Europe have led the way in funding innovation for alternative energy and sustainable energy, you've certainly done a much better job of that than the United States. If you say the government is 1/3 of the leg and now governments are broke, how are you going to, are corporations going to step up more to this?
So the question is how we're going to fund the elements of sustainability with governments broke, correct? Okay. Does anybody have some thoughts around that? Are companies going to step up, or?
I'd like to answer that and also make a reference to one of the previous people that asked a question about the L magazine and being on the iPad more expensive. I think if the government is broke, but every new solution needs to be cheaper per se, then it's going to be very difficult, I think. Because I think companies that produce a magazine on an iPad have a totally different proposition. It's more convenient, you can download it everywhere, and they have the right to price that as they choose.
I'm not saying they don't have the right to price it.
I mean,
there's a big difference. Don't twist the question. I'm not saying they don't have the right. What they're saying is we're going to maximize our profits because the goal of a corporation is to increase shareholder value. And so they're doing, I think what L's doing is very smart. I'm not saying it's not smart, but it's difficult to say if my primary goal is to maximize shareholder value, to then say that my primary value is to save the planet. Because those two things are in competition with each other.
yeah, but I think that is also too easy, because I think if they have a creative solution which is environmentally friendly, and people are willing to pay for that, that helps, because it's less of a burden for the environment, and it's also profitable for a company. And I think then you get into a very positive spiral, and I think then it can go hand in hand. But if you say, well, it's hard to say you're environmentally friendly while you price it higher, yeah, then I think what's the solution?
By all means.
Yesterday at the session about innovative startups collaborating with large companies, one of the people there that made a really good comment. Is he here, Francois Boreel? Okay, so he made a really good comment because he used to be CEO of BT Global Services. He also used to be an entrepreneur several times. And one thing he did say is that, please, startups, don't assume you know what happens in my large organization. You don't know why I make the decision. You don't know some of the issues I have to deal with. Or maybe the people who came up with the pricing didn't talk to each other. I don't know. So we can't assume they're simply trying to...
I worked in media pricing, so I'm fairly confident I understand the discussion.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I think I don't want. We're getting stuck on this one issue, and we haven't answered the question that was asked here, and I'm going to hold us to that about, are corporations going to step up to the plate with governments being broke? Does someone want to?
Well, I like the comment earlier. I think it was earlier today that we talked about in one of the sessions about privacy. And right, I think Scott McNeely said, privacy, just get over it. I think that we should now say, being broke, just get over it. Everybody is broke, so what? What happens when everybody is broke? We just go on. I know that's not an answer, but it's interesting to discuss during a glass of wine, I think.
And I don't want to be cynical about this either, but with governments being broke, what we see is in emerging countries, or some of these countries affected, some of the interest lending rates are coming down for those, or at least the base lending bank money is being made available, at least to some people, and to some investors. And really, if you're going to be building renewable energies, and the price of energy that you spoke about for solar energy is coming down. Why? Amongst others, because interest rates are coming down, cost of capital is coming down, because there's not so many good places to be investing your money, which is reasonably safe as far as returns are concerned. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I don't think corporations are going to come up and say, well, we'll set the feed-in tariffs for energy-producing companies or investors. But ultimately, if banks or whoever has the capital left, because it's just going from one pocket to the other, question is really where's the best place to invest. I think renewable energies generally is still a good and proven investment proposition. And even if tariffs do come down, maybe it will decelerate a little bit the cost reduction that we've seen on photovoltaics. But actually, the reason why they really plunged down 2 or 3 years ago is because some of the subsidies really did drop, because the money was no longer made available. It's, as you said exactly, it's put a crunch on the market. There's been consolidation, overcapacities, prices drop, and all of a sudden they become really, really an interesting proposition. So it's a self-regulating a mechanism. Ultimately, if nobody comes up to pay for new power plants, well, guess what? Electrical power is just going to become so much more expensive because it becomes a premium and not a commodity, really.
So that's interesting. In the Netherlands, we have a lot of windmills to create energy, renewable energy. And actually, those windmills, instead of common belief that people think that they run on wind, they don't. They run on government's money. And so the reason why they're built is because of government subsidies. Now, what is interesting, what will happen when the government subsidy goes away? Then probably the companies that are building them are going to think, how can I build them in a way that they become viable, that they become competitive? So,
by then has matured.
Yes.
You only need
Yes.
help when it's a baby, nascent industry.
Yeah.
Once it matures, it needs no help from the government. And this is what happened with solar.
or even the government should get out of the way, right?
The government should get out of the way. Now it can compete on its own right against any other kind of energy. And that's the good news.
Okay. I'm getting the time signal that we're standing in between wine tasting at this point. So with that, what I will do is thank the panel here and thank the audience for the lively engagement and debate. And with that, I wish everybody a nice glass of wine.